All right, if you're learning Spanish, you have definitely had this moment. You see a word with an accent mark, and then you see the exact same word without one. What is the deal with that? Well, that little mark is actually the key to asking questions like a native speaker. Today, we are going to break down these Spanish question words, also known as interrogatives. I'm talking about words like cuando with an accent and cuando without one. I mean, they sound exactly the same when you say them, but that tiny little mark changes literally everything about what that word is doing in a sentence. So here's the bottom line. The one on the left asks a question, when? The one on the right is part of a statement, when? Stick with me through this, and I promise you, by the end, you'll know exactly why, and you'll never get them mixed up again. So here's our game plan. First up, we'll talk about why this is all so important. Then, we'll dive into the one single rule that changes everything. After that, we'll look at how to actually build these questions correctly, and finally, we're going to put it all to the test. Let's get into it. So, really, why should we care so much about these words? Well, think of it this way. They are the difference between a yes or no answer and a real, actual conversation. They let you ask for details, for stories, for real information. Mastering these is how you go from basic Spanish to having genuine, meaningful chats. So let's get on the same page. An interrogative word is just the technical term for a question word. You know, who, what, where, when, the whole gang. We use them all the time in English without even thinking. Spanish works the same way, but with one super important visual clue that tells you a question is coming. And that brings us to the main event. Honestly, if you only remember one thing from this whole explainer, make it this. There is one simple visual rule that separates a question word from a regular word in Spanish. This is the golden rule, right here. If you're asking who, what, where, when, why, or how, that word has to have an accent. If you're just using it to connect ideas, like the house where I grew up, then there's no accent. It is really that straightforward. And just look at how clearly this chart lays it all out. You've got que with an accent asking what, and then que without an accent meaning that. Or check out donde for where versus donde for where. It's the same pattern all the way down. That little accent is like a big flashing sign that says, hey, I'm a question. Okay, so we know what the words are, and we know about the accent mark. But how do we actually use them to build a grammatically perfect question? Well, there are just two simple rules we need to follow. Now, this first one is a really big deal because it's completely different from how we do things in English. A preposition is just one of those little words like to, from, with, or at. And here's the rule. In Spanish, you can never, ever, ever end a question with one of those words. I mean, think about it. In English, this sentence is totally normal. Who are you going with? See how that word with is just kind of hanging out at the end? We do that constantly, and it sounds perfectly natural. But in Spanish, that's a major foul. So instead of being at the end of the sentence, that little word has to pack its bags and move all the way to the front of the line. It goes right to the very beginning, even before the question word itself. And here's exactly what that looks like in practice. The with, which is con quién in Spanish, just moves right up front. So who are you going with becomes, quite literally, with who are you going? Con quién vas? Makes sense, right? And you'll see this all the time with common phrases, like de dónde for from where, or a qué hora for at what time. Notice in every single one of these, the preposition, the de, the a, the con, is right there, kicking off the whole question. All right, moving on to our second rule. And this one is all about word order. When you ask a question in Spanish using one of these interrogative words, you have to do a little switcheroo with the subject and the verb. Take a look at this. In a normal statement, it's subject, then verb. Ella come. She eats. Easy enough. But when we ask a question with a question word, that order flips. The verb, come, jumps in front of the subject, ella. ¿Cuándo come ella? It's a small change, but it's absolutely crucial for sounding natural. Okay, so we've got our big ideas down. Use an accent for a question and follow the two construction rules. You feeling ready to try it out? Let's do a quick quiz to see it all come together. All right, first one up. How would you ask this? When does she eat lunch? Think about our rules. Which question word are you going to use? And what do you need to do with a word order? And there it is. ¿Cuándo come ella el almuerzo? You see it? We've got the accent on cuándo because it's a question, Check. And the verb come comes right before the subject, ella. Check. Perfect. Okay, next one. How about this? What do you have in the suitcase? Again, which question word do you need? And what happens with the subject and the verb? The answer is, ¿Qué tienes tú en la maleta? We use que with an accent for what, and we did the flip. The verb tienes comes right before the subject tú. See? You're totally getting the hang of this. All right, last question. And this one is the boss level. It combines everything we've talked about. Where is he from? Now think carefully about that little word at the very end, from. And the correct answer is ¿de dónde es él? Let's break that down. That preposition from, which is de, can't be at the end, so it moves right to the front, giving us de dónde. Then we just do our simple verb subject flip, SL. Fantastic job. So that's really the secret. That little accent mark and those two simple rules, they aren't just grammar points. They are the actual keys to unlocking better, more detailed questions and having way richer conversations in Spanish. You have the tools now. So the only question left is, what will you ask first?